How's it going, everybody? Welcome to a brand new episode of Crypto Clout, and today we realistically have to cut away all the bullshit because I don't think that there's much time left in the current paradigm of cryptocurrency. I think that things are shifting very rapidly, and personally, if I'm going to give one prediction for the year of 2019, I'd say 19 is going to be the year of XRP, and once XRP overtakes Bitcoin, Bitcoin's not going to get that #1 position back. Now, whether or not this monumental switch of power this exchange is going to take place in 2019 or 2020 is really anybody's guess, but I'm going to argue and make an argument in this video that that's an inevitability, that the power structure has made its selection, and that the banks and all these different things are just going to force the entire space to get used to the decision that's been made, and we're already seeing the rudiments of this decision taking place with the various different entities that have aligned themselves with Stellar XLM, for example, and of course XRP being the fundamental point of this conversation in this video. So at this point, I don't think that there's any question in anybody's mind regarding whether or not there's at least some degree of manipulation at play here, and I think that at this point the debate has essentially drifted towards wondering to what degree are we actually experiencing manipulation. I think that there is essentially one side of people who've essentially taken up the idea that perhaps we might be seeing the most amount of manipulation in 2018 in the whole history of cryptocurrency. And then there's other people who say that essentially it's the same amount of manipulation that's always been at play. Now, it's also important to take into consideration how easy it is for Bitcoin to be manipulated. Essentially, there's all these different configurations that people have taken into account regarding how much Bitcoin a person could actually move, and how these entities can actually I mean, there's videos that go into extensive detail about this, talking about how the fact of the matter is that this availability for manipulation is essentially going to be sort of an Achilles heel with the reputation of Bitcoin, because essentially that the influence that China could have and to a larger extent various different actors on the global stage, because you have to understand that so many different people all around the world, different entities, countries, what have you, bodies of power can essentially leverage the manipulation to their favor. So I think that when people are talking about the certain circumstances with the market where it currently is, I think that that's definitely a hit that can essentially probably is going to be an Achilles heel overall with the reputation of Bitcoin. We've seen the Bitcoin reputation has sort of been getting dragged through the mud, in particular because it was so overly inflated last year, in particular when we were seeing Bitcoin seeing its all-time highs, that essentially that old paradigm, I mean, we're realistically way back where we were sort of that September of last year area, even moving as far back as July. It's looking like as things continue to drop down, but necessarily my opinion is still fairly optimistic when I look at these different things, because I think that there's two schools of people who are looking at this, and they could either see it one way, you could either see signs, or you could see miracles. And essentially there's people out there who get too wrapped up in the symbolism of the valuation of these different, they get wrapped up in price, and they fail to look at exactly what's happening behind the scenes in terms of the movement of these various different technologies and which various bodies of power are essentially aligning themselves as the respective case might be. So when we see certain things like breaking crypto exchange Coinbase, explore support for Ripple XRP, market crash, XRP Litecoin slump by 9% and 12%, obviously we're going to see these headlines that are going to pop up time time and time again, time immemorial, is essentially the fact of the matter is that the news is going to hop on every bit of volatility that we get and try to pull people over to the FUD way of thinking, essentially activating that fight or flight mechanism in the consumer brain, which, hey, I mean, you got to give them credit for where credit is due. That's their job. But I think if Coinbase added XRP, that would be miraculous. I think that would be a huge stepping stone, and it would make a huge opportunity for XRP to compete with Bitcoin, because I know people often criticize, they criticize me for talking about Coinbase still, because they say, like, oh, well, Coinbase isn't the only game in town anymore, and essentially the overall cryptocurrency space, the population of people who are engaging with these different services are essentially have moved on. But I don't think that's entirely so. I think that Coinbase still remains a very significant entity, and I think that the fact of the matter is that people who are getting involved with crypto, who are using Coinbase, and tend to drift towards not using the Binance and all these different exchanges, which I think does bar a lot of people off from basically and XRP in particular. If they had that access to that sort of pool of people, it would be very interesting, nonetheless. And then just in sort of a funnier, lighthearted news, Brazilian crypto exchange mistakenly sends user 35 million on 127 withdrawal. Wow, that would be a pretty good day. Probably shit my pants, and then you'd have to give the 35 million back, of course, because the 35 million doesn't go missing without somebody looking for it. We know that from the movies. Anyway, so 2 U.S. bills focus on cryptocurrency market manipulation and improving regulations. So, like what we were talking about in the beginning of the video, regulations and market manipulation, it's going to be a huge conversation building up, I would say taking up a lot of the discourse regarding cryptocurrency. In particular, 2019 is going to be a year of ironing out a lot of these regulations and basically looking at the market in its face and essentially evaluating a lot of these different variables. So U.S. bill seeks to protect cryptocurrency investors from market manipulation. Bitcoin price pain continues as the crypto plummet. Venezuela to sell oil for petro cryptocurrency in 2019, says Maduro. So, I mean, that's all that. I'm not really going to go in more detail. We've talked about that extensively before. Anyway, crypto exchange Coinbase exploring support for Ripple. We talked about that. And overall, I mean, I know that there's people who are getting intimidated by the bear. They get intimidated by the fact that you're seeing red. I think is pretty much a deterrent for new people getting involved with crypto. But then again, I think that as these things develop and we see cryptocurrency coming into its own, I think that there's a vast overlook. People are overlooking XRP and Stellar. People are overlooking the fact that these establishment cryptos posit a very significant shift in the way that the establishment perceives the various different activities that are happening within the cryptocurrency community. And I think that XRP really does stand to benefit in regards to the volatility that we see. It's not all bad. I mean, obviously the volatility is not going to be here forever either. So anyway, I'm actually going to be including a link to this YouTube video right here by Alex Cobb, which discusses the possibility of seeing XRP and what's really going on behind the scenes of this sort of Coinbase and the interest that they've shown. So I think that this video is really awesome. So, and of course, it's always great to give out different links so that if you guys are interested in hearing other YouTubers' opinions, now you could find that link in the description if you want to keep doing some more research, because at the end of the day, all we have separating us from the woods is the research that we do, and if we want to keep our heads above ground. You know, we want to stay sane. Like I always say, you have to look at what's happening behind the scenes and have sort of a data analytical perspective of these things, and sort of take emotion out of it. You sort of should enjoy it while you got it. But all that being said, I hope that you guys have enjoyed this video. Hope that you found this informative. Remember, this video is for entertainment, educational purposes only. You know, obviously, I'm not your dad. You know, this video is not any sort of advice. If you want advice, go ask your dad for advice. That's not me. Anyways, yeah, overall, my outlook on XRP is fundamentally positive. I'm going to basically say that the likelihood of seeing XRP pass Bitcoin's looking more and more plausible by the day, and that's just my 2 cents, you know, my opinion and all that. But all that being said, like I said, make sure that you guys subscribe to the channel, and of course, you know, connect with us on Twitter and comment down below, letting us know any questions, comments, or concerns or suggestions you might have for future videos. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Stay relevant, everybody. Have a good one.